So guys, in this next news story, a gang who kidnapped a Turkish radio DJ and forced his girlfriend to hear his screams as he was tortured to death are facing years behind bars. Koray Alpergin, who's 43, was ambushed outside his North London home and bundled into a van along with his girlfriend Gozde Dalbudak, who's 34, who was on a first visit to the UK from Turkey on October the 13th, 2022. Ms. Dalbudak was locked in a toilet at the Stadium Lounge restaurant near the Spurs Stadium for 2 days as her boyfriend cried out in agony nearby. Mr. Alpergin, who had become involved in the drugs trade, was brutally beaten with a baseball bat and had boiling water poured over him. The bottoms of his feet were repeatedly stabbed, and he was also tortured with items forced into his rectum. His naked body, burned body, was eventually dumped in woodland in Loughton in Essex before it was found by a dog walker. When the kidnappers let Miss Dalbudak go, she took a cab to a restaurant she had been at 48 hours before, and the owner thought she was a homeless woman begging for food. Mr. Alpergin was the owner of a Turkish radio station, Bizim FM, and had connections with celebrities such as P. Diddy and Salt Bae. Tejean Kennedy, who's 33, and Samuel Owusu-Opoku, who's 35, were both found guilty of kidnapping the DJ and his girlfriend. Kennedy and Steffan Gordon were found guilty of false imprisonment of the DJ, but Owusu-Opoku was cleared of that offence. Gordon was convicted of the false imprisonment of Ms. Dalbudak, as was Kennedy, and Owusu-Opoku was cleared of that offence. The jury cleared Gordon of the murder of the DJ. Kennedy was also cleared of the murder but found guilty of manslaughter. Owusu-Opoku was cleared of murder. Previously, Owusu-Opoku and Yigit Herman had admitted perverting the course of justice. The jury deliberated for over 42 hours before reaching their unanimous verdicts. Judge Sarah Whitehouse KC will now sentence them on a date yet to be fixed. Mr. Alpergin had appeared in court himself in 2010 when he was given a suspended prison sentence for broadcasting Bizim FM without the required £50,000 licence. The DJ had worked as a bus driver before he launched the radio station, and he was granted citizenship in 2001. It's believed that he returned home to Istanbul in the summer of 2022, where he met Ms. Dalbudak. When he came back to the UK, he seemed on edge and told a friend he had said the wrong thing to the wrong person and they wanted to question him. In the weeks before the kidnap, 2 trackers were fitted to his Audi. Ms. Dalbudak had been in the UK for 3 days when Mr. Alpergin took her to an expensive Italian restaurant in Mayfair on October the 13th. Although he appeared to be wealthy, Mr. Alpergin was in dire financial straits. At his flat, police found a summons for non-payment of council tax, other county court judgments relating to outstanding debts, and a solicitor's letter in connection with the £32,000 that was owed for his Audi. When the couple returned to Mr. Alpergin's home in Enfield, a man emerged from the shadows with a bread knife as the woman got out of the car and told her to shut up. The prosecutor, Crispin Aylett, told jurors as Koray Alpergin got out of his Audi, a man ran towards him. The man was followed by 3 others. Although Mr. Alpergin tried to run away, he was quickly caught. He called out for help, but he was frog-marched back past his own car and bundled into a white van that was parked nearby. Much later on, the police recovered from outside the flat a blood-stained fragment that had been torn from Koray Alpergin's shirt. The prosecutor said so he must have put up a fight, but he was simply outnumbered. His girlfriend was bundled in the back of the van and was sobbing loudly when Mr. Alpergin told her to be quiet, my love. She was knocked unconscious, and the next memory was being in a dark place and hearing Mr. Alpergin being tortured to death. Her hands and feet was tied, and she was blindfolded and made to walk to a toilet where she was locked up and fed only scraps of chicken and potatoes. After he was killed, Mr. Alpergin's body was taken to the nearby Triumph Trading Estate, and then it was placed in a Renault Megane and driven to Loughton in Essex in convoy with a Fiat Diabolo van. The body was found lying in the fetal position with his hands crossed and tied at the wrist in front of his chest with a red cloth. Post-mortem found 94 separate injuries, including cuts and bruises and a blow to the head causing brain damage. He had injuries to the neck consistent with something being around his neck which was used to strangle him. 14 fractured ribs and bruising to his chest suggested the use of a baseball bat. He also had tears to his rectum. The vehicles were later burnt. Ms. Dalbudak was released by the kidnappers and given £40 for a cab, which she took to the only place in London she knew, a restaurant called Mem and Laz, where she had been with Mr. Alpergin. The owner did not recognise her when she entered wearing an oversized green jacket and beanie, and the kidnappers had given her with bruises to her nose and eyes. Said, at first I thought she was a beggar or something because she didn't have any makeup on and she looked very rough and everything. She looked scared. She said she didn't want the police involved. All she wanted was to get her passport and to fly out. The prosecutor told the jury his girlfriend went back to Turkey on the 21st of October 2022, and although she has remained in contact with police officers in London, she has not come back to the UK, nor is she willing to do so for the purposes of this trial, nor is she prepared to give evidence over a live link from Turkey. For perfectly understandable reasons, you may think she wants to put this whole thing behind her. Ms. Dalbudak said in a police interview she had met Mr. Alpergin through a female friend in Turkey in June 2022, and she said they flirted for a while, and after a couple of months she planned to come to London for about 5 days so they could get to know each other a bit better. She came on the 10th of October and had a return booked for the 16th of October. She said Mr. Alpergin took her sightseeing and to the best restaurants, and she didn't know him that well, but said he had shown interest in her and affection and she wanted to spend more time with him. On the night of the kidnap, she was wearing a black leather trousers with boots, a cream top and a cream trench coat. Ms. Dalbudak said a man appeared at the side of a car with a knife and told her to shut up. She saw 3 or 4 males holding Mr. Alpergin and she was very scared, and she said she was thrown into the back of the van and she was crying loudly. She told police officers that she thought she was going to die, and she goes, she was knocked out by being punched twice in the face. She goes, the next memory was being woken up in a dark place and hearing Mr. Alpergin screaming and someone hitting or beating him. She could hear him shouting in English. She tried to explain she was a tourist on holiday and was crying a lot. Her hands and feet were tied and she was blindfolded and made to walk to the toilet where she was locked up. So the lavatory only had a tiny bit of light and smelled like fish or dead animals. She said to the guys, please get me a ticket to Istanbul airport, and they said, no, we are not. She said she was in a state of fear and panic and she wanted to get out of that place as soon as possible. Miss Dalbudak was placed under special protection of the police after Mr. Alpergin's body was found. And so Gordon, he admitted his role in the kidnap but claimed he believed it was part of a drugs robbery and that he was just helping some Turkish guys. Kettle, who's a carpenter, claimed that Gordon had asked him to wait nearby while the kidnap took place, and he only later realised he was being used as a getaway driver. Kennedy Owusu-Opoku did not give any evidence. So the conviction details of the defendants, I'm going to go through now just to clarify. So you've got an Ali Kavak, who was found guilty of manslaughter, kidnap, false imprisonment and perverting the course of justice. You got Tejean Kennedy, who found guilty of manslaughter, kidnap and false imprisonment. Steffan Gordon has pleaded guilty to kidnap. You got Samuel Owusu-Opoku, he pleaded guilty to perverting the course of justice. There was also a 17-year-old boy who was charged with perverting the course of justice and he pleaded guilty to it. And there's 2 other men that have been charged as part of the investigation and they're going to be standing trial at a later date. So the DCI web said, the circumstances of Koray's death were like something you'd see in a gangster movie. First, he was kidnapped by a group of men in a highly organised operation that involved placing a tracker on his car. He was then taken to a disused restaurant where he was subjected to a horrific attack. The individuals responsible for his death were careful to cover their tracks by cleaning the restaurant and burning out cars used to move his body. However, we cracked this case through painstaking and lengthy analysis of CCTV that demonstrated the group's collective activity and presence at key locations. We also presented detailed mobile phone records to show the jury showing how they were in contact before, during and after Koray was kidnapped. So I am pleased that these extreme, violent and dangerous people have been convicted and will now be in prison for a long period of time, and this should send a message to those involved in organised crime and serious violence that we will leave no stone unturned and we are determined to bring them to justice. Just want to say rest in peace, Koray. My condolences go out to your family. So speaking from his home in Turkey early this week, Mr. Alpergin's father, Tunçe, stated that he believed his son's lifestyle had made him a target. He said the Turkish Mafia were jealous of the life he lived. They wanted £150,000 from him, but they instead killed him inside that kebab shop in London. When he declined to explain further, the jury was told that no attempt had been in fact made to extort a ransom from his friends and family. But given the nature of the crime, investigators concluded that the killing bore all the hallmarks of being linked to serious organised crime and was almost certainly drug-related. The prosecutor, Crispin Airlick Casey, told the court, from the number and nature of injuries that were sustained, the prosecution suggests that it is not hard to envisage a group of sadistic mafia thugs taking it in turn to inflict injury. The prosecution alleged that Koray Alpergin was kidnapped and tortured either so that he might be punished for something that he had either done, said, or forced to give up something that he knew, perhaps the whereabouts of either drugs or money, and which his kidnappers also wanted to know. Giving evidence, a number of the defendants attempted to distance themselves from what had happened. Steffan Gordon, who admitted kidnap but denied murder and false imprisonment, told jurors he believed he was taking part in some drugs robbery and that he had been asked to provide muscle for some Turks. They were saying, it is going to be easy. He is going to be with his girl and he will give it up easily. He is not a good man. I never knew what was going on apart from putting him in the van. I never knew what was going to take place next. The other defendant, Ali Kavak, also said he did not know what was going to happen, but he claimed that after Mr. Alpergin was killed, he was forced to become involved in dumping of the body. He said he did not see the corpse when he moved from the vehicle to vehicle on his way to Essex because he had his eyes shut. Giving evidence, he also told the court that another defendant, Tejean Kennedy, had made death threats against him and his family, warning against naming him and giving evidence in court. He said that a couple of weeks earlier, he had been handed a note that he understood had been written by Kennedy. He was asked to read the note to the court. My man got peas on you. Looks like I got to do the mad thing too. Asked what that meant, he said that peas meant pounds, explaining a bounty had been put on myself. After almost 48 hours of deliberation, Kennedy and Kavak, as we know, were found guilty of the kidnap and false imprisonment of the couple and of Mr. Alpergin's manslaughter. So guys, this is a new story coming in from London where a Turkish DJ's life turned to horror when he was kidnapped by a brutal drugs gang who tortured him to death in a Reservoir Dog-style execution at a London kebab shop. Absolute madness, guys. Once again, rest in peace, DJ Koray. My condolences go out to your family. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.